Welcome to Think Fast, where we discuss things. Which what are those things? I don't know half the time, but there are some things which we discuss. But the person who knows most things, Suchita, welcome to the show. What is going on?
Oh my God. What's going on, man? I am recovering from a lot of tears which was shed yesterday because of yesterday and day before because
So
of
Brahmastra, is that what
Federer's
happened?
last.
Ah,
Oh
okay.
my God. No, I have not seen Brahmastra. And it seems like our Vishnu is on a little leave today. Hi, Kshitij, who's our audio engineer for the day. No, dude, Federer's last match, man,
I know.
and that he played with Nadal and that Nadal came through, given that he apparently has like some, muscle tear and I think his wife's about to pop a kid in the next 10 days. Like
Hmm.
he had like his own, personal shit going on,
Yeah,
showed up for Federer, and that literally all of like 2000s tennis greats were there,
it was beautiful.
literally it was just amazing, dude. And just watching Federer and Nadal weep together was like
Holding
just,
hands.
yeah,
The
holding
beauty of
hands
that
and
moment
weeping.
is that, yeah.
Yeah, no, but what was your takeaway from that moment, man? It was very emotional for me.
There's been this conversation I've had with a few people, right? About this whole fact about just showing what is um, healthy masculinity.
Hmm.
And this kind of showed it in that sense, right? Because you always think, okay, no, you got to be like this athlete and be this, but I feel that this actually showed a like the is the most famous rivalry in, like, I don't even know like what the last big one was
Yeah,
in tennis, and you literally
Sampras
saw
Agassi.
them, and you always had this kind of back and forth, but the fact
Yeah,
that it was so emotional, it was so beautiful, it's almost like the right kind of send off. I feel a lot of really good sports greats don't have the best send offs. But this, I think, like this is like perfection. Like they could not have asked for a better way. Little like, oh, I don't know which camp you're on because I'm not on any camp. But
Federer through and through.
so you must have been like
But
weeping away.
I mean, honestly, I haven't watched tennis properly in like a really long time. But I mean, watching Federer play back in back around 2005, 2006 was what got me into tennis. And then obviously, I became a major like Federer fan. I used to see every single match of his. But I think the one big takeaway, at least for me, and not to continue being meta about it, but you are as good as your competition. And
Hmm.
I think the thing that extended both Federer and dude, they're inching towards Federer's 41. Nadal is
Yeah,
in that general direction. That they've been able to have a 2 decade career that also in tennis is
yeah,
like unheard of, right? And not 2 decade money like घिस के निकल रहे हैं, like you know what I mean. they've
correct.
they've reached finals, etc., in the recent past. But for me, I think that quote unquote rivalry slash friendship is a sign of how you're as good as a competitor, and there's nothing that is great for your career or your growth or whatever else than aligning yourself with the right competition. So it was just beautiful to watch.
You're also seeing a lot of sports people who don't seem to be aging. Like, look at LeBron James, who's still kind of going strong.
Yeah.
On the NBA side, you have, yeah, there's so many of those happening. Cricket, however, doesn't people seem to age quite quickly, but that's a whole different problem. Everybody seems to be in their
Not that
early
I know
30s. I'm like, I
much
thought you
about
guys are
cricket.
older.
Yeah. Yeah.
But speaking
So I
of
see.
speaking of famous rivalries, there's a new rivalry. It's called Falguni Pathak versus Neha Kakkar. Are you in on this rivalry?
कहाँ से
After
कहाँ तक? You have
Federer and
gone
Nadal
to
के
like
बाद
the,
Falguni and
I don't
Kakkar.
even know what, like Paharganj slash Sarojini Nagar of like कहाँ से कहाँ तक. But in any case, no, I don't know about this rivalry. But please enlighten me with more bullshit for today's episode.
So in classical style of like taking classical, or rather like taking like OG songs and trying to redo them, there was a song. I mean, if you look at Falguni Pathak songs, there's some of those OG songs, right? So
Bro, she only
Maine
had
Payal
one.
Hai Chhankai
There
was
is
her.
no sum of. एक ही था. That
नहीं, बहुत
classic
सारे हैं
song.
यार, बहुत सारे. You go to play dandiya, you hear all the legend
Okay.
greats.
Next
But
time
Neha
I'm in
Kakkar has a
Bombay.
new version of it out, and it became this whole thing. Like, it's terrible. Um, Falguni Pathak put out a comment saying that, thank you for supporting my original version. I can't. Nobody asked me because I don't own the rights, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to see this support. So yes, it is totally unnecessary news for this show, but it is still
Thank
it is a
you.
rivalry, so we shall speak about it.
You've wizened me for the week. I appreciate this unnecessary
Go
piece
listen
of
to the original.
information. Dude, the original is it's my favorite song. It's like my go-to. Dude, you meet me at a party if I am over 3 drinks down. There is like a 99.9% probability that I will play and sing along and dance to Maine Payal Hai Chhankai. Like that song is my.
I'm very
It's
confused
like.
by that statement right now.
I
I'm
know
very
शक्ल से
confused.
दिखता नहीं है, but
नहीं नहीं बिल्कुल नहीं.
yeah, no, but it's my favorite song ever. What else,
But
man? Coming back
speaking
to
of the world of
tech.
business, what's been going on?
Oh, you're asking me, and I'm
I'm
asking
asking
you.
you what's
Look
going
at
on. Or should I
this.
ask you?
You,
You want
you.
to ask me? I will tell you. You decide how you want to do this one.
आप बताओ, आप बताओ.
Um, I don't know why suddenly the connotations are weird. So Zomato is it's cracking the whip on cloud kitchens running multiple brands. While you were away, we actually covered this story that there's one spot in Bangalore that I think has over like 200 restaurant brands operating out of it. A lot of them named similarly to popular restaurants. So people didn't know that they were ordering from some other place. Stuff like just hygiene and how is that work happening was
Yeah,
the question. Like, is it Zomato's responsibility? So I'm guessing in some ways this is them kind of getting into it before it escalates for them. Any
yeah.
thoughts on? Is it okay for like 200 restaurants to operate out of one kitchen?
No, I think that's yeah. I mean, hygiene nightmare. And I
Hmm.
think I don't know about you, man, but I think more than the number of restaurants running out of a single cloud kitchen, I think there are such few cloud kitchens that are genuinely able to consistently deliver on like a top notch experience. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like there were like a bunch of these, which were the OGs of cloud kitchens, and you just see how like poorly their quality deteriorates over a period of
yeah.
time. And to have this like one place run 200 is just absolutely absurd. But
Suddenly you'll find
I
some
want.
Manchurian in your biryani. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, all sounds vile and disgusting. But
Yes.
switching over to something that I wanted to pick up in our intro, which is there's this headline that ran recently on Mint that said SoftBank cuts valuation of IPO bound Oyo to 2.7 billion. Obviously, this headline ran soon after Oyo announced that they were inching close to profitability and have obviously
Hmm.
had two fairly good quarters given how screwed they must have gotten thanks to COVID.
Yeah,
And I don't know, man, but reading this headline, and Mint is usually very good with their reporting. You don't see them
yeah.
do like clickbait at all. But I think tying it back to the conversation we had last week, I think it's important for people consuming content like this to not have this like condescending approach of, oh my god, once they used to be so big, now they are 2.7 billion. I mean, 2.7 billion is like more wealth than any of us have individually or collectively created. And i
Yeah.
think i think things like valuations going up and down are frankly a rite of passage with respect to building any company. So for me, keeping the headline of it aside, I just hope people's interpretation of these headlines, as discussed last week as well, become more mature versus the pehle aap ye hote the ab aap ye ho,
Yeah.
which we all need to collectively sort of get away from. What's your take on this?
I I agree with you, right? Because and I feel that sometimes while valuations might go down, it might also what you got to look at is the overall deeper schematics of the business. Oyo
Yeah,
always had this perception of having a very bloated valuation. So this if this is a correction in the right direction, it's a good thing, which means they're right.
yeah,
Maybe I would rather say focusing on the right aspects as they go to IPO because one of the big learnings I've had in recent years, as a lot of these brands have gone to IPO, has been the fact that how the venture capital side works versus how the market works is different because the market looks at what is the profitability or other paths to
yeah.
profitability, like the base level metrics in that sense of the word. And
Hmm.
what I think a lot of these startups are now doing is okay, let me correct those aspects as I go towards IPO and make sure that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, yeah. No, which is good,
While
dude,
my dog is doing
across the
ape shit in
board.
the background.
That's okay. That's okay. Switching gears, dude. Just a couple of quick points. Shein has a new rival. So, Pinduoduo, which is this like alpha unicorn based out of China, has launched this new
Hmm.
app called Temu. Terrible name, but Temu has
Temu.
launched in the US
Brand
and
ambassador is Temur Ali Khan.
Oh my God, nowhere close. यार उसे क्यों इतना cancel करा रहे हो? First, poor kid was cancelled because of his name. Now you're affiliating him with Chinese startups. But in any case, so this PDD, which is what is popularly known as, is they're basically like a manufacturing like behemoth, right? Like PDD is
Mm,
like. Snapdeal or Vishal Mega Mart on like acid. They're like that big,
mm,
and they've really cracked going genuinely direct to manufacturer, and obviously they're known for selling cheap shit in China. So they've launched this new competitor to Shein called Temu in the US, and apparently it's been downloaded more than 400,000 times within less than a month after launching in the US. So you're seeing a lot of like China merchandise and fashion wars being fought on shores outside of China, which is interesting. And given the amount of scrutiny that TikTok is under, let's see what happens to Shein and
yeah.
PDD. Brad Pitt has launched a genderless skincare line. You're seeming like you're not going to be buying this anytime soon.
Uh, from pits to no pits is what the tagline will be for anything which takes
Oh
away
my
acne.
God. हाय हाय मिस्टर डुग्गी राला, संडे शाम को आप तो लाजवाब.
I'm going in like the worst direction in my head. I'm just like going, but it's great. Yeah, I like the fact that it's a genderless skincare line, and you're seeing more and more of this kind of really kind of like happening in recent times. Although I want to see what Tom Cruise comes up with. That could be interesting. Is he going to come up with a way for us to
Scientology.
get that agelessness?
Oh my God, that man is beautiful. Another piece of news that caught my eye was there's a gifting solutions company called Join Ventures,
Mm,
which was obviously in the news because they've raised a significant amount of money. But more than the amount of money that they've raised, what I found really interesting was they sort of building themselves out as a quote unquote roll up. So this whole
yeah.
like Thrasio rubbish, which we obviously discussed significantly last year and earlier this year, given the amount of VC funding that went into it. But what I like about Join Ventures is that they have a very strong focus on gifting as a niche, right? So these guys have IGP, which is a very well known and heard of gifting sort of platform. They also recently launched, not recently, but they launched this company called Interflora, which is like a
Mm,
premium ferns and petals. So they've really taken gifting as a category and launched multiple sub brands within gifting, and are obviously scaling that up through this investment. So reason it caught my eye was because I like the category that they're building for, and I like the way they're
mm.
building it. In other news, Air India, Vistara, Air Asia are likely to merge by 2024 as Tata Group discusses plans. Had to
It
happen?
makes
What's
sense,
your
right?
two
I mean,
cents?
how many airlines
Yep.
does Tata have? Like Air India, also Air India has Air India Express under it. So there are two brands technically within Air India. There's Vistara,
Yeah.
there's Air Asia.
Yeah.
I feel if you look at the article, I think it's interesting just in terms of the report saying, okay, there's going to be one full service. And
Hmm.
Vistara has been terrible recently, which is sad because I still love Vistara
Yeah.
as an airline, one of the best
Yep.
airlines. I remember the food service, everything was top notch, and the only thing I see now online is people really cribbing about it.
Hate. Yeah.
Interestingly, I saw a couple of posts of people who have flown Akasa and they haven't had great things to say, saying they expected a lot, but seems very like base level is
Hmm.
what I heard from like literally a couple of tweets and Instagram stories is all I've seen. So
Hmm.
that's another interesting player in this
Piece of
market.
news.
And yeah, but I think this merger makes sense. Yeah, it's I mean, I was always wondering how are they going to manage so many. If you have
Yeah.
one full
Yeah.
service and one uh, budget one, it makes total sense for them to do this.
Yeah. In other news, Pepperfry to file draft IPO papers between October and December. They were in talks to file their IPO papers. I remember last year in like November, December, we guys were discussing this. So good on you, Pepperfry. All the very best.
Yes.
India's Reliance Retail in talks for rights of beauty retailer Sephora. This piece of news, obviously, God knows what in talks, quote unquote, means, but this piece of news comes after, I think a couple of months ago, they had announced that they were working on a platform called Tiara, which was going to be their competitor to Nykaa. Thank God. I
Yeah.
hope they shelf plans around those names. But what do you think about this, man? Beauty is heating up.
I guess also the market's really scaling up, right? You're seeing so many more of these brands coming
Hmm.
up. I feel that there was a phase late last year, early this year when you felt like there were too many brands in this space.
Yeah.
But I
Still
feel like
are
this
too
is
many.
this aggregation game is kind of coming in. I feel you're slowly seeing all the brands which are already there kind of evolve.
Yeah.
So much more to tap into in the market and really go. And I feel
Yeah.
at some level, what's really going to work is you go mass scale and not try to go as niche, which seems to have been the way women went till now.
Hmm.
But I mean, nobody does scale like Reliance does, so it makes total sense.
Yes, Queen. And very quickly, other things.
Mibigo.
Mebigo Labs, which runs Kuku FM, has raised money. Congos to you, Kuku FM and team. Kevalya Vora, I had no idea that was his name, who is all of 19, has become the youngest Indian and the first teenager to have personal, let me correct this, paper wealth of at least 1,000 crores thanks to over a 50% rise in the valuation of Zepto. Bro, I wanted to ask you, where do you think Zepto is going in all this quick commerce debacle, war, this, that, and the other?
They'll either get acquired, which is most likely the case, or at
Hmm.
some point they will have to not just be a quick commerce play, because quick commerce is a feature, it's not a product.
Yeah.
And at some point of time, I mean, I have a feeling they'll get acquired, is where I
Hmm.
see
But
this
by
kind of going.
who? Who's left? Reliance is in
Think,
Dunzo. Blinkit
Reliance
is
isn't
off.
done so. You never know. I mean, Mr. Adani might be getting into the game on this front also. You never know.
Mr. Adani.
Mr. Adani
That's
is into
true.
every game these days. So Mr. Adani might just get into this and say, "Come on, Zepto, आओ बच्चों मेरे
Yes.
साथ."
Yes, Queen. And just last couple of stories. The
I have to go
Beyond
one second.
in
This one story.
what?
Yes, that one. That
Which
is the
one?
story. The Beyond Meat one is the best
Dude,
story.
this. Okay, you go. You go.
The Beyond Meat CEO was arrested for biting man in road rage incident. He
This was
really went
amazing.
beyond meat, didn't he?
Oh my God. Varun, how many times have you rehearsed that joke? I can imagine you practicing it in front of the mirror. He really went beyond. You told you I am also, why am I muttering so much? I am 2000% sure you said this joke to your friends yesterday, tested it out on them at night. Nobody laughed, and now you're bringing it back to the table to get some cackles. The only person
Yes.
who's probably laughing is Jalasmi, but nobody else. Kshitij, did you
Yes.
laugh? Mention in comments. Comment below, please. Kshitij, did you
We're
laugh?
waiting for Kshitij is like he's still he's still like soaking in that joke and seeing if it made any sense to him. But
Kshitij is
but
not
yeah,
paying attention. Kshitij is taking. He said
little he
little.
laughed a little. He laughed a little. He said little.
You got a
Fair enough.
cackle.
Fair enough, Kshitij. I got a
Cute.
little laughter from you.
Yeah, but I have a quick question for you before we end our very long introduction, which I'm
Yeah.
actually really liking as a feature in our podcast. But did you see this little outrage that Divya Gokulnath,
Yeah.
the co-founder of Byju's, she posted this like long thread on LinkedIn about how, like screwed up a lot of the headlines. What is your takeaway from this, little rant on LinkedIn of hers?
I feel at some point, especially Byju's has had such a terrible time really understanding why the media hates them so much.
Hmm.
And I feel it kind of came out of that. I thought it was there's a part of me which said it's a good thing for her to have done it, but on the other
Hmm.
side, does it really help solve the problem? Is the question. It doesn't really solve it. It might just aggravate it a little bit more. So
Hmm.
and yeah, I would have not suggested someone do that. It's more.
Yeah.
I feel like it's far more gracious to just ignore these things and just go ahead and do your business and let the business do the talking. But it's fine. I mean, as an individual in an organization, if you're the co-founder and you see this happening at a continuing basis, it is very natural at some point for you to kind of put out something like that. And thankfully, it was also done in a slightly like I feel there was a certain tongue-in-cheek funness to it because of
Yeah.
the graphic that was there. So I'm okay. I mean, I wouldn't suggest anyone do it, but it's at least she didn't go like she didn't go ape shit on them. She just kind of took a way to kind of make it almost like a memeified version, if that's what you can call it.
Yeah, yeah. Memeified version was one part of it, and also I think it just was written from a point of view of educating the person reading her post versus shitting on media entities that are like writing rubbish about Byju's. Do you know what I mean? Like it was written with that
Yeah.
intent of, bro, this is mathematics, and I am just making math simple for you through these explanations. But
Mm.
last story in our intro is, you go for it, sir.
But it's 5G services finally to be launched on the 1st of October. My question is, what do we do about the 4G services, which are still not up to speed, for lack of a better way to put it? They are definitely not up to
Dude,
speed.
seriously, man, it's like whenever I land in Bombay, like my phone just does not work. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's just like Airtel versus Geo, territory war thingamajig, but like my phone literally just does not work.
So what's been good with Geo though, and because I am actually someone who's taken on the eSIM. So while I have a
Hmm.
I use Vodafone as my provider, still do. Vodafone, I never say Vodafone Idea, I say Vodafone. But I have the Geo eSIM, and I've realized that it's good to have both options if you can do both options, because
Hmm.
Geo seems to work everywhere. I haven't
Yeah.
gone to a nook and corner in this country, and I've literally been like, I've been to the forests in Tadoba, and Geo was there because there's a Geo
Wow.
tower. Only signal you get in Tadoba is
Hmm.
the Geo tower. The locals had some stories as to why the tower is there, which I will not put on record. But
Before our
they,
podcast is cancelled.
exactly, I will not go there. But yeah, they basically said that if you want to be here and use any form of internet and data, get a Geo number, and that's when I got the eSIM. It's been a great add-on. But yeah, I feel at some level we got to come to a point of not going to this 4G, 5G, but saying, can we just get really fast internet speeds? And if I had to put my like, if I had to bet on someone, I'd bet on Geo to get it right. So over
Yeah.
time, I'm guessing the 5G game might be driven by one player, because I don't know about the others. I mean, Airtel seems to be around, but you can't really beat
And
how
growing
Geo's
fairly
kind of
well.
scaled up.
They've gone
Yeah,
like, yeah, but I feel like it's a market segmentation, right? Like Airtel has
yeah,
taken the call to play the premium game. Geo has taken the call to play, the mass game, and that seems to be the two buckets within which all companies are built, right? One is just
yes,
going after anyone and everyone, and the others doing that 30-40% premium on masstige products. And with that, our intro has come to an end.
yes. But what are we talking about this week? We're talking about your favorite word after Falguni Pathak, which is Thrasio. Uh,
Yeah, made evident
Guys, can you
through all our
count across
recordings
all the
last
episode
year.
of Think Fast? After all the episode Think Fast, how many times has Suchita said Thrasio? It will be many
Yeah,
times you have said Thrasio. It's
more
your
often
favorite
than
word.
or whatever other terms I am like infamous for saying very
Yes.
frequently.
Yes. So we can't be digging into India's roll up business. Also the whole moonlighting conversation around the fact that there are companies saying we're going to like take tough stands. The government seems to have a very interesting progressive stand to this. We both have our own perspectives on it. And what else? What else? What else? What else are we talking about? Social commerce. This is weird. It used to be very hot, but now is it even warm scenario with social commerce? We'll dig into that. And what YouTube just done with their partner
Mhm.
program around monetizing shorts. We'll dig into that. And but before all of that, should take a break because we are hopefully having some advertising on the show. Because we think fast, but the ads better move slow. I don't know if that made any sense, but we'll come back after this break.
Hello, hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cock and Bull, Kajol, Nivedita, and Abbas joined Cyrus to discuss the Maharashtra government plans to do away with homework and why a Saudi man is being called the polygamist of the century. On The Wire Talks, Chandar Uday Singh, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, talks to Siddharth Bhatia about how delay and procrastination of courts in India have affected some of its most prominent cases. On Advertising is Dead, Varun is joined by Rishabh Sharma, head of Twitter Next India. He explains the latest India Twitter Trends report and takes us through its research process. On A Niche Thing, Anish talks to Nishant Padhyar, editor of Stuff magazine and What Hi-Fi, about the features of the recently launched iPhone 14 and 14 Pro and asks whether iPhone users really need another update. And on Vartalab, Akash and Naveen are joined by artist Santanu Hazarika. The three of them talk about their artistic inspirations, cats, and humorous misadventures that they have had over their lives. Once again, I'd like to remind you all, don't forget to visit our merch store. It's on ivmpodcast.com. We have a link to the store. It'll take you to our partner's website, beyondfollow.com, and you can go directly beyondfollow.com/IVM. Also, do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please do spread the word about this show or any of the other shows that you are listening to. You can do this by telling a friend, because word of mouth is helpful, or rate or review these shows wherever you're listening to them. That is also really helpful to us. And just a reminder, a number of our shows are available on YouTube as full video podcasts. Do check those out as well. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Bumble, Volvo XC40 Recharge, Heads Up for Tails, HDFC Mutual Fund, and TransUnion Civil. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to Think Fast, where it's supposedly we've had a very, very long introduction, as Jalasmi has told us, but it's fine, Jalasmi. We're just getting into the groove of things today. But back to our first story, or rather, getting into our first story, which is Suchita's favorite word, Thrasio.
Yay! Yay! Okay, so guys, for the first story, what we're basically going to do is we're going to do a quick overview of all the investments that were made in India for India Me Too, Thrasio clones, which essentially were 5 companies as Mensa, Global Bees, Goat Labs, Ten Club, Upscale, and there are obviously a lot of other upstarts that were building within this business. There's a really interesting article that came up on the cap table, which sort of covered where each of these guys are at, how strategies have changed, who's building what, where, when, how. But if I had to ask you, Varun, what of this, I won't even say shake up, but what of this like reinvigoration and rethinking around what the quote unquote Thrasio for India should be, how much of this, do you think could have been preempted before versus now? And just to, sort of give you context, everyone really seems to be clearing up their approach, their categories, the number of brands, this, that, and the other. How much of this, would you say, I told you so, or I could have told you so had you asked me on day one of building up your roll up?
I feel it's not necessarily just for this model. I think across the board, when
Hmm.
when the market's kind of going up, when there's a lot of funding happening, when the focus is just grow, grow, grow and scale, the idea is to go
Hmm.
as wide as possible, which is where they all went wide. Even like I think globally, look at the Thrasio market, like you're saying that that's where it all went. But
Yeah.
when you kind of go into a market which is kind of like digging its heels and saying, no, 1 second, we got to focus on being profitable. We got to be more like prudent with how we're spending our money and what we're focusing on. You tend to kind of tighten shape up. It's
Hmm.
I call it the cycle of the market as it kind of keeps moving. So it makes sense they're going in this direction. Could they have done it sooner? Yes. You shouldn't wait for the market to tell you what to do. You should be able to kind of preempt these things and do it. But there are too many factors at play in most cases for founders and for people running these businesses. But I'm happy they're doing it now because this is a model which you can't write off. It makes sense to have a Thrasio-esque model, but is there the best case or what is the right way to do it hasn't been kind of found yet, is what my belief has always been about it. Because roll-ups are a smart way to kind of build this one up. But what is the right way to do it is still a question which I still don't have full clarity on. Do you think that's the right way to do
Yeah.
it?
So, I remember in the first couple of episodes that we discussed, and without going into details, someone from like a VC fund that invested in one of these Thrasio Me Too, type companies, they had reached out to me for, just inputs on what direction is this heading in India? What are the challenges that one is likely to face, given that, the business of roll-ups is a lot about acquiring small emerging brands, giving
Mm,
them the capital, expertise, infrastructure that they need to scale. And when I was going through this cap table article, not to sound cocky AF, but literally like what was playing in the back of my head was, I told you so, I told you all of these would be issues that come up. Because as like interesting as this whole business of Thrasio in the US, which by the way, and we've discussed this in previous episodes, even in the US, all these Thrasio Me Too's are like 30 of these companies that again raise a shit ton of VC money. All of them are going back to the drawing board and are rethinking what they're building. In fact, Thrasio itself has seen a significant write down in terms of their valuation over the past couple of months. Obviously, one part of it is because global markets are correcting themselves, and anything that's happening at a macro level ends up percolating to different types of companies and organizations. But I think the
mm,
one big thing over here, and if you remember the first time we had discussed, I remember, I think this was our second or our third recording where I had come with sheets and sheets of like research.
yeah,
um, if you look at companies that have built that are multi brand retailers, and in a nutshell, that's what quote unquote Thrasio is. It is a multi
exactly.
brand retailer, right? And this is the thing that, side note, but this is the thing that like frustrates me about all of these like gimmicky news coverage things, and also gimmicky ways in which founders sell their company, because you're just like, dude, you're basically a multi brand retailer. Stop calling yourself a roll up, this, that, and the other. I think the only models to look at are models of, Inditex, which runs Zara. And even in the
Mm,
conversation that we had back then, Inditex has multiple different brands, right? Zara is one of them. There are like three, four others. Jalasmi, if you could just ping the names of other Inditex brands. Zara is obviously the most well
big one,
known
yeah.
brand. Even if you look at H&M has COS, H&M has like two, three other brands within their overall fold. dude, just building one brand is so tough. And it's not just because building a brand is tough, it's because everything associated with building a brand, whether it's supply chain, manufacturing, infrastructure, finding the right offline retail stores, scaling those offline retail stores. You know what I mean? There are so many complexities around all of these. Now, I think where a lot of these companies, I wouldn't even say have gone wrong, because all these guys are hardly 1 year into their business. I mean, I know how many screw ups I made in the first 4 years of running LBB. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like a
Hmm.
rite of passage. But I do think what would be interesting to see a lot these guys do is maybe double down on certain specific categories, and
Yeah.
go very deep in a category versus trying to acquire anything and everything. So, for example, I don't know if you saw this, but Mensa has recently acquired this peanut butter company called My Fitness, which
Hmm.
I found a little absurd, because all of their other
Yeah, it doesn't
bets
fit the
have been
mix.
in all of their other bets have been in fashion. And dude, even if you look at team DNA, right, what it takes to scale fashion, you need people who first and foremost have taste, understand design,
Yeah.
understand consumers, understand supply chain, understand manufacturing, understand cuts, like understand offline, because offline is still where like 90% of fashion sales takes place. Understand, you know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
so much that goes into just understanding fashion, let alone a category like fitness foods, which requires a totally different mindset, DNA, so on and so forth. So I think one thing that I hope happens is and I think this is why Goat Labs is doing a very good job. Please ask me to shut up, by the way. As you can see, I'm very
No, no, no.
excited
Please
that
go on,
there's
go on, go
like
on, go on. I
um
have a bunch of I have points, but this is good info for the audience to listen to.
But basically, for example, like I really like what Goat Labs is doing over here, because Goat Labs has essentially taken fashion as its area of focus. Because the guy who's running Goat Labs, he's ex Flipkart fashion, if I'm not mistaken. Like I think he was leading fashion, and has been a veteran in the space for a while. But they've basically just made all of their bets in fashion, and now they're scaling up their fashion bets. So, for instance, I don't know if it's working or not, but prima facie as a consumer, I like what they're doing with their acquisition of Label Life. So I don't know if you saw, but Label Life, they're now doubling down on offline. They recently did a collaboration with Disney, which I was being targeted with Instagram ads on across my
Yeah.
feed. They've gone back into a good amount of like content creation, which they had dropped the ball on. So point number one is go deep in a category, build expertise around that category, and scale that category up. I think the second thing is, when you look at the problems that small to mid-sized businesses have, there are way too many. And this was actually the biggest challenge even we faced while trying to problem solve for small businesses. They suck at everything from digital marketing to content creation to
Yeah.
supply chain to manufacturing. I think what would be interesting to see some of these guys do is maybe take a sliver of this and scale that up. So, for example, if you look at that company Club, right, KLUB,
Mm.
they are
Yeah.
basically providing like or like even
Revenue based
Velocity for that
financing.
matter.
Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
right. So
yeah.
so they've taken a very specific problem statement, which is, how do if I am building my business on cash flow, how do I create more, how do I create the capability of an expanded cash flow
Yeah.
through models like Club Velocity, which I think the only thing that'll be the only way in which you can go wrong with that is you've picked the wrong problem to solve for. But the
Correct.
upside, right, is like much more significant than trying to solve for any and every problem that exists for small to mid-sized businesses, because you'll just go mad and you'll just hire a bunch of people who will be running around directionless, because no one really knows what's the end goal that we're trying to solve for the companies that we've acquired. But I can talk about this endlessly, but over to you, sir. What do you think?
You mentioned club, right? And I had the club founder on advertising is right some time back, and some of his points were interesting because I just look at the model as something that actually feels like something that should have a bigger spread. Because the whole point of how they infuse capital is you have to be a profitable business. You got to be in that sense about, and also basis how your revenue goes up and down is how their share goes up and down as well. So it's not like they're always taking the same proportion. So the difference between a loan versus a venture capital is this is the middle ground which they've kind of tapped into, saying, okay, we're not taking equity from you, but it's also not like
Mhm.
a bank loan where you make money or don't make money, you have to pay it back. So they found this
Yeah.
interesting sweet spot in between, because capital is, I mean, capital and expertise are the two things people look for, or other brands look for when they kind of get into a role of business in that sense of the word. But what I found interesting also looking at this whole piece is that on one end it's about saying, okay, how many do you bring into the fold, but what you also kind of have to look at saying at what point do you stop adding more and really solidify and scale others. So this if you look at even flows whole like push towards saying, okay, I won't acquire as much right now, but I'll really focus on kind of growing right now. But I feel the
Yeah.
most interesting news for me was Fireside. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Fireside has had like I mean, you look at some of the investments which have done really well, right? Everything from like a boat to a Mama Earth are all on their portfolio. And the
Yeah.
fact that they've recently kind of, what they put 40 million into 10
Not
Club,
recently. This was back in the day. This was back when everyone was like
2021.
borrowing
Yes, sorry,
money. Yeah.
2021.
Yeah.
My question is this an interesting way for a venture capital fund, which is focused on a
Hmm.
specific area, to say, one
Hmm.
second, I will fund the brands, I will also fund the aggregator. Can my role be larger than just that part where I actually figure a way to the companies which I have funded scale as well through this? I don't know, there's a model there because it could be very interesting to see at a scalable level. Could that be interesting? Because you have capital if you're a venture capital fund.
Yeah.
About the other end, you have this as well.
I don't know, man. I think where I'll push back on the second point that you made was, and we discussed this in the last episode as well, but I do think if I were a VC and if I were a VC in consumer brands, I would be investing in like platforms and infrastructure because that's what these brands need.
Hmm.
They don't need someone coming in with strategy. Like, I mean, distribution eats strategy for breakfast. And the
100%.
biggest issue that we guys were talking about this earlier on as well, but like Instagram has become a pain in the fucking ass to navigate because just
But we
acquiring
shall come to
consumers
that
is.
because that is in another story of ours today.
Yeah, yeah. No, but like, my TLDR on this point is that if I were a VC and if I gave a shit about consumer brands, I would genuinely just be looking at platforms and infra versus adding more consumer brands to my portfolio because distribution is just like impossible. But enough time on this story. What is next?
Speaking about giving a shit, what's your take on the whole moonlighting controversy that's been going on? Because there is so many sides to this. Just for anyone who's been living under a rock, there's been strong conversations and companies pushing back. Like Wipro's taken a tough stand against employees who are, almost like moonlighting and having, almost like a second job, if not a freelancing gig. They fired 300 people, which is a
Yeah.
little extreme. But also they have Wipro, so they have a lot of people. But
Hmm.
it is an extreme step to take. Also, like not a smart move and not a nice move. I would say I put them both together in that sense of the word. But it's been a topic of conversation. Recently, saw something which the government kind of saying. Ravi Chandrasekhar, who's the Minister of State for Electronics and IT, he said he recommends the tech industry to not try and suppress side hustles. What's
Hmm.
your take on side hustles and moonlighting?
So generally, I'm a big fan of side hustles as long as you're like upfront about your side hustle. And
I agree.
we've spoken about this briefly before, but like, for me, Think Fast is a side hustle.
Yeah.
Sure, it's like close to no cash money, but it is an interesting way for me to two things: understand the world of creators, and
Hmm.
understand how tough or easy distribution can or can't be. But the second thing is it's also a way for me to like process what I'm thinking, right? Which you
Yeah.
can see in my multiple rambles across like multiple episodes on multiple things.
Yes.
But I think I am like all in for side hustles, but I do think it's really important to be upfront about what you're engaging in with your employer and work with the assumption that your employer may or may not have the organizational maturity to quote unquote handle your side hustle. And really what I'm getting to is, dude, there are like for people who are listening to this episode and for people like you and me, right, there are enough opportunities that can give you the degree of flexibility that you want. If you are choosing to work at Wipro, whether you like it or not, you need to work by their rules. And if their rules categorically say that moonlighting is not an option, moonlighting is not an option. It's that simple. Find a place that floats your boat. So my takeaway from this is, in the grander scheme of things, I'm all for it. I do think supplemental income is needed in a country like India, where especially for your more entry level jobs, you don't see salary growth beyond that, 6 to 8% year on year, right? I'm assuming that's what it would be even at a company like Wipro, for that, mass of jobs that they have. But I think the thing that I find a little funny is when, English speaking, very like, elite folks on Twitter make a debate
Hmm.
out of this, because you're just like, dude, I mean, this first and foremost has zero ramifications on your life. And
Yeah.
second, like, there are enough options for people like you and me, man. It just comes down to what you want to choose. But you go ahead, sir. What do you think about this moonlighting cacophony?
Um, at the base level, there's a few things, right? I'll talk about the simple fact that even when I had my first job at MTV and then at Channel V, was there a side hustle constantly? Like when I was working with Channel V, I would go shoot gigs for like,
Hmm.
where there were bands playing and stuff and make whatever money from that and stuff like that. I have friends who've done design, made websites. That's always been a thing. Most companies say as long as, like I said, doesn't affect your job, your primary job role, it's fine to do. But I feel the pandemic kind of gave it another layer, is that people realized they
Hmm.
could sit at home and literally do two full paying jobs, especially tech workers. And
Yeah.
the problem now is, as you kind of think, okay, come back to work or come back to the office, a lot of them don't want to give up on that structure they've built for themselves. And I feel it's tech more than any other place that has this problem, because it's very easy for someone who's like a legit coder to sit down and say, one second, this makes sense for me, I can do multiple things. I am not
Yeah.
in any way not doing my job to the T.
Hmm.
So maybe some of those rules have to be rewritten. There are some jobs which you can't do two, three of those. I mean, there are
Hmm.
ethical reasons. Let's say you're in sales, right? That's an ethical problem.
Hmm.
Let's say you're in a creative, even creative teams can kind of do that part. I know there's enough freelance that happens on that front, but can you hold two jobs? You can't. Technically, by law, you can't be employed in two places.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
got to kind of understand that, and not just like, again, the same thing, right? You go the headline and look at the headline and you push back, but
Hmm.
by law you cannot hold two employment contracts. So if
Yeah.
you want to do two things, one is your job, one is your side hustle, and at some point some of those rules have to be written by companies, is the way to look at it, if you ask me. But would I really push back and say don't, like, fully outlaw it? No. Would I say
Hmm.
that everything goes? Also no. But you as a
Hmm.
company have to understand this is the way the world is functioning now. You can't totally turn around and say I will fire everybody who I know even has a side hustle. That just shows, like, it has a culture ramification, it also has a talent ramification. People might not want to come and work for you. So you got to think
Yeah.
about that before saying this.
And with that, on to the next.
Yes, on to the next. But before that, we shall take a break, because for some reason my dog seems to be looking at me like, "What are you doing on a Sunday, dude?" I'm like, "Wait, Lulu, can you relax and not scratch the door?" But so while I deal with Lulu, guys, we'll take a break and come back on Think Fast. Welcome back to Think Fast, where we might almost end up with the canine third host, the way Lulu's kind of going at the door, but hopefully she will get her own mic. I ain't sharing my mic with her. She's too small, tiny to get on top of this anyway. But what is our next story? What's the next story? We've gone moonlighting, we've gone this, but oh yes, this one. Both of us have had many side conversations about how social commerce, the ones like this is the future of everything commerce, now seems to be like one of those like small side conversations where everybody's like, okay, it was fun, maybe it was good, but no, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, so much on this, and also like, nothing at all. Given it seems like we've been talking about this, endlessly for the past couple of months, because there've been so many
Yeah,
updates at, Instagram's and
yeah,
TikTok, of
yeah.
course, as we know, has pulled out from the US, and from certain European, countries for them with respect to their experiments around shopping on TikTok. Instagram Shop, which was touted to be the Amazon killer. And I remember, all of those like glaring headlines of Amazon's going to eat its breakfast for whatever, Instagram's going to eat Amazon's breakfast. Is They were all over the
Hmm.
headlines, right? And obviously, all those conversations have quelled down because guess what? Everyone has realized that, there is this fundamental way in which the world works, which is consumers and sellers and brands look for jobs to be done, and the job of social platforms and the job of commerce platforms usually peak very different points of,
Yeah.
consumers areas of interest. And there is this dream, right? It's kind of like the super app dream. So super apps, every from the Paytms of the world to Bharat Pay maybe not so much,
Remember
but
Tata New?
Flipkart is Tata New. Yes, everyone tried to launch. By the way, whatever has happened to Tata News?
I have
Side
no idea.
news,
I should
but
check
like,
it
have
out
you heard
actually.
anything? Yeah, and
I should
there's
check it
like no
out.
marketing for it either. But in any case, for me, this whole thing of see what an influencer is wearing and buy it immediately, and the concept of super apps
Hmm.
seem to be in the same bucket, which is like they just do not exist because different consumers have different needs, and
Yeah.
this whole thought of all things impulse purchases, or like impulse purchases through social has just not played out anywhere at all. And for those of you who have just joined into ThinkFast in the more recent couple of weeks, go back and listen to our like second, third, fourth episode, because we had this long conversation on Wish versus
Hmm.
Instagram versus Pinterest versus like Pinduoduo. And I think the general consensus was what makes the consumer want to open Instagram is a very different impulse and instinct than the behavior on Amazon. But before I get into my extended thoughts around all things social commerce, aap bataiye.
So Instagram's going through this weird phase, right? It's been going through this for the last, I would say, year, couple of years or so. Is as TikTok kind of grew and Instagram realized, okay, one second, for me to survive as a platform, I need to go in that direction. But the hardcore Instagram user was used to a certain way of things functioning, and shopping was had become a part of that. Like you, I still feel Instagram's a great place to discover brands. I still discover a lot of brands off Instagram, but at some level, do you need to complete the cycle there itself was a question which I feel they kind of answered for themselves now by saying, okay, where are we focusing our energies is to become take that entire short form video piece, really scale that up, because that's where everybody is going. Like we're going to get into later about how YouTube's getting into it and scaling up as well, but that is the way the world is working. And even if you look at how short form is leading to like larger longer videos working and all those other formats scale up, that is the it's become the trigger point for
Hmm.
everybody. So it makes sense that Instagram say, okay, let's not like focus on 50 things. Again, let's refine down. So our focus is on short video. Our focus is on getting that right, looking at how we evolve stories, looking at
Yeah.
how we move to a recommendation engine based platform rather than a follower engine based platform, which is where again all platforms have gone, right? Everything is
Hmm.
now on the algo feeds you content. You don't necessarily just choose who you get content from anymore. And I feel that
Yeah.
because they're doing so many of those things, can they also do commerce and scale up and kill Amazon? I mean, is that a battle you really want? And
Hmm.
while Mr. Zuckerberg is in the metaverse, Instagram's focusing on saying, let's focus on these areas. And
Yeah.
you hear this from brands, right? The number of founders you speak to who say that performance marketing, especially on a meta product, has become tougher in recent years, is a fact of this. And also the fact that the whole cookie piece that kind of happened and tracking kind of being pushed down. So I feel that also could have been a factor to them pulling back, because
Yeah.
they're not able to share as much data, not able to target as well as you could before. And rightly so at some levels, because there has to be some form of privacy controls on that front. And so it makes sense. Is social commerce dead? I would say social commerce is a discovery engine. It's not a purchase engine for
Hmm.
brands. Is the
Hmm.
way I look at it.
Yeah, and just getting to definitions, right? Like social commerce is not a business model. I'd like written a
Mm.
post on my Medium a while ago about this, but B2C, B2B2C, B2B, like I get these constructs, but the way social commerce was also defined was so loose, because social commerce basically was touted to be purchasing through your peers, right? So basically I am inspired by a peer or someone who I'm following somewhere, and that inspiration leads to a purchase. I think which again is a very like convoluted sort of funnel to wrap your head around, because the biggest issue, for example, in countries like India is, one, India historically has been a low trust country when it comes to all things e-commerce.
Yeah.
Second, merchants and sellers unfortunately end up being low trust categories of internet characters to purchase with, because there have been so many issues and complaints. And I think this is where even Shopify in India will run into a bit of a wall, is you could buy from a direct to consumer brand through their Instagram channel, this, that, or the other, but what are the chances of that order reaching you efficiently, fast, and at the best price and at the best time? I'll give you a really small caveat over here. I recently got introduced to the wonderful world of Amazon Prime. Like, I'm not a Prime customer at all,
Mm.
but Dhruv, whatever,
Oh,
he
so,
signed
so
me up on his
you were
account.
late onto this bandwagon.
Extremely late, extremely late. And dude, I've lost my marbles like buying dumb shit on Amazon just because it gets to me so freaking fast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And that's what I mean. Like the motivation to purchase for consumers is very different from motivation to inspiration. And if you look at any American platform, whether it's Snapchat has built a great business, but it's built it off of brand advertising, not even performance marketing. You look
yeah,
at Pinterest has built a great business off of brand advertising, not even performance marketing.
yeah,
And closing the loop with the conversation that we had about Instagram, we've discussed this before, but I think the biggest challenge Instagram has today is like an identity crisis, right?
mm,
What are we building? Are we building a creator platform? Are we building an engagement platform? Are we building a reach platform? Or are we building a commerce platform? Because then everything from your customer experience to the way your teams are designed to the way, to the kind of projects you chase are dramatically and drastically different. And I think this is where Instagram's paradox lies, because it's almost like they're like desperate to move out of this sort of reliance on advertising revenue. But the
yeah,
problem is they're under a company whose DNA is all things advertising. And up until there is a systematic shift, you'll always see the business model lean back and fall back on advertising versus wanting to chase conversion as a metric to success. And let's not only throw Instagram under the bus, right? Look at Google was
yeah,
doing so much around Google Shop. How many of those experiments have actually panned out, anywhere close to what they needed to be?
yeah.
My submission on all things social commerce would be, we need to stop talking about things in jargonistic ways. Business models are business models, and this business model
Exactly.
of consumer inspired impulse inspired purchase has just not seen the light of the day as everyone hoped it would. But we've got
Mm.
an interesting story coming up as a follow
Yeah,
up to this.
yeah. Because I mean, talking about Instagram, when YouTube launched YouTube Shorts, and
Hmm.
India was one of the first test markets they had when it was on like a public beta. What's interesting is YouTube is the only platform which has figured out how to monetize content for creators. Like nobody's
Yeah.
even close.
Hmm.
That entire just rev share model. There are millions of creators across the world who literally their entire money comes from just YouTube. And the question was, how do you do that for shorts? Because you how do you put pre-roll ads in? How do you put mid-roll? I think the recent news was YouTube might soon have like at least 4 ads in longer videos, at least if not 4 to 5, in that sense of the word. So the problem was with shorts was a few things. Is that short form has largely been funded by what's called creator funds. So look at Snap, look at Instagram. There's a creator fund saying a couple $1 billion or $1 million, whatever. And all the creators who are part of that program get a share from that fund. The problem is the more creators they add into that fund, the less the share is for each creator. So it's not a
Yeah.
scalable way to fund creators. It felt like a stopgap till platforms figured it out, because most short form content, you can't put an ad between the content because it's short anyway. Secondly, a lot of the content has music, and music rights become a problem because you can't just share revenue with a creator if it has music that is owned by, let's say, another record label, because you got to share that revenue with them. So on YouTube you can't monetize a video that has, let's say, music from, let's say, Sony Music or Universal, or,
Hmm.
or even like a regular like a small scale music label. But what YouTube's done now is super interesting. They have now saying that they're going to monetize short form video from early 2023, where
Hmm.
basically 45% of the revenue will go to the creator, whether you use music or not. What they're also going, how it's going to run is the ad will run between shots as you're swiping from one to the other, and the
Yeah.
share is basis the number of views you get on your video. So obviously a little more complex than what the long form video one is. And they're saying you can even monetize videos that have record level music in there. What
Hmm.
didn't come out as clearly, and that's something which a lot of creators on Twitter actually kind of made long threads on, was the fact that there is a share that will go to the record label.
Hmm.
After that share goes, what is remaining will be shared between YouTube and the creator. So the 45% is what is remaining. It's not of the overall,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, they said YouTube could have been a little more clear about this, but I feel that's nitpicking. this is a legit way to
Dude, it's
scale and grow
excellent.
monetization for a creator. If you're a short form creator, you finally have a way to make money the same way the long form guys have. So I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. This issue, they could have been a lot more clearer about it, and unfortunately, because they got Colin and Samir, the two creators, to announce this for them,
Hmm.
Colin and Samir have gotten a lot of DMs saying, guys, you weren't fully truthful about this. They didn't talk about this. So they've put up a YouTube short today talking
Yeah.
about that part and clarifying it as well. So yeah, my long explanation of this is done. Now, what's your first level thoughts?
So I have a quick question for you. On TikTok, TikTok doesn't pay its creators, right? In the form of advertising revenue share. I mean,
As much as
I
I
know
know,
they
no, it's
pay
still from a
yeah,
fund. As much as I know,
yeah, correct.
they're not as it's not a refined product the
Mature,
same way
yeah,
YouTube's is. Yeah, not mature product.
yeah. Yeah, I think this is where YouTube's overall monetization is just like 300 steps ahead of the entire meta universe. I
Yeah,
think they've done so many things so well. And in a past episode, we had spoken about what YouTube's like North Star has been, and also what's really propelled them to manage all sorts of competitors coming up, whether it's a TikTok or it's an Instagram, Snapchat, or whatever else. It is exactly this, right? It is that they have found a way to create skin in the game for every single part of the YouTube ecosystem. And the YouTube ecosystem basically is like three people: there's creators, there's consumers, and there's brands.
yeah,
And I think they're the only platform that has figured out a way to make all three of them play and work off of each other versus, in competition with one another. And without having read the report and just, basing my sort of response on the TLDR that you gave me, I
mm,
am not surprised that YouTube is the one saying, you know what, enjoy creating on TikTok, but guess how much money that makes you. Uh,
exactly.
and I and I think that they've taken the first step could possibly be a really good way, to even get a lot of the TikTok creators to switch over to YouTube, with a fairly low switching cost by just incentivizing them in the right way.
Yeah. What's also interesting is they're also kind of going to bring in fan funding to shorts as well. So fan funding
Hmm.
largely happens on live streams where someone's on a super chat, where you're on a chat, you
Like
want your question to be answered.
micropayments.
There's micropayments, there's super
Yeah.
thanks, which is basically you just giving money to a creator you like. Super
Hmm.
stickers and channel memberships, even all of that is kind of coming in
Hmm.
later, I think in 2023. So they're taking all the products they've built. And this is, I think, the good part about having built a really strong and, like you said, mature engine for monetization for creators and saying, now we'll spread it. So
Yeah.
suddenly, TikTok, Instagram, everybody else, Snapchat, who are all playing in this space, have so much more catching up to do because they don't have this specific product. Um,
Yeah.
and that's really why everyone still says that if you're a creator today, if you have a long term focus of being a creator, YouTube is where you got to
The
make sure
best.
you have one finger in there because that's where true monetization has actually been built.
One is true monetization. The second also is true like audience retention. I don't know a single creator who doesn't bitch and moan about how horrible Instagram is after you hit a certain scale. But
Yeah,
I also don't know a single creator who bitches and moans about, their ability to reach their consumers through YouTube.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know a
Mhm.
single person who has more than 1 million followers who said, oh my god, YouTube is like cock blocking my handle.
Doesn't.
And I think that's the great thing about their platform, where consumers, creators, and brands are almost given like an equal pedestal, versus, sorry, but on platforms like Instagram and even TikTok for that matter, where creators genuinely are second class citizens, even though because of creators are the reason why consumers use platforms like Instagram and more.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think Instagram has really somewhere I don't want to say fallen apart because it's such a large and such a great platform, but I think Instagram somewhere has like really lost it. I just think they have an identity
Essence,
crisis. Like
identity
they,
problem. Yeah,
they
for sure.
they don't know who they stand for. They don't know what they stand for either. And I think this burden of delivering on advertising revenue doesn't seem to be helping them much at all.
And what we don't realize in India is because we don't have TikTok in India, is that
Hmm.
globally, TikTok has taken the place of what Instagram has in India. But if you look at it
Yeah.
globally, that's where the big struggle is. Instagram became the platform for celebrities. And at some
Hmm.
level, I think there was an interesting conversation the other day online which said that the top 10 creators, top 10 followed people on TikTok was top 10 followed on Instagram. All top 10 on Instagram will be celebrities. All top 10
Hmm.
on TikTok will be creators, which is a
Hmm.
great way to kind of compare that aspect of it.
But Varun, I think this goes back to like the point about that we were talking about earlier, right? Airtel versus Jio, which is why can't Instagram just embrace being premium? I don't get it. Like why don't they have, so for example,
Because they're a mass
YouTube in India.
platform,
Yeah, but they
unfortunately.
don't.
Yeah.
I mean, Instagram doesn't have to be the mass platform, right? Like they could acquire something else or like build something else which brings that mass into the overall like scheme of
But
things.
wouldn't you say that's a problem with Meta in general? I think across the board, that's been a problem with Meta saying what is Facebook's role anymore as a platform? What is Facebook groups doing? What I feel all their products have this question, apart from maybe a WhatsApp, which is the only one which I feel is still kind of stuck to its core capability.
Yeah,
The
but
question is across the
WhatsApp,
entire suite.
yeah, yeah, no, 100%. And also, dude, like WhatsApp can afford to be mass because it's a freaking messaging platform, bro. Like
Yeah,
their business, their so for example, and because you're in the advertising business also, you know that there are two types of platforms, right?
yeah,
You either go down like the Condé Nast route, or like the route of like The Verge and the likes, or
mm,
you become like Navbharat Times, right? This
yeah.
beach ka bichu is pointless, and I think that's
Beach
why
ka bichu. Oh my god, that's the term of the day.
मैंने
क्या
पायल है
सीखा आज मैंने?
छनकाई
Beach
बीच
ka
का बिच्छू.
beach ka bichu.
No, but like, dude, like think about it in the Indian context also. Who is killing it? It's either platforms, whether it's e-com, social, content, whatever else, who are very clearly saying ki boss, I'm catering to the top 30, 40 million, and this is the game I'm going to play, and I'm going to fucking crush it at this game. Or it's Google and Facebook who've said nothing less than 400 million users, right? The people who are going nowhere, which is a lot of the video commerce slash like short video TikTok clone type platforms in India, are the
Yeah.
ones who are in this awkward like 60 million, like na idhar na udhar, no so premium where the premium advertisers want to spend money on me, no so mass where the massiest platforms want to spend money on me. So this like messy middle
Yeah.
is where things seem to be really getting screwed up, where Instagram seems to have landed
So
itself in
I'm
the
at
game.
Instagram's Creator Day this week. I'm
Hmm.
going for a few pieces, and let me just like it'd be good to have a chat with them to understand what they're looking at. I'll come back with some info before our
Gossip, oh
next
my
recording,
god,
gossip for
insider
next recording.
info.
Yes, but this episode has gone over an hour. As Jalasmi has told us, fine, Jalasmi. We'll go for a break. And we come back with recommendations. Welcome back to Think Fast, where we are beach ka bichus. No, we are not. We are kahan ka bichu. Kichu ka
Oh my
puchu.
god, we are
Uh,
targeting the top 30 million listeners of India. We know what our strategy is, unlike Instagram.
yes, yes. So, what's your recommendation for the week? I think you have one.
Yes, if you are in Delhi, I highly recommend this play called For the Record, which
Mm,
is happening at Black Box Theatre, which is this like boutique, destination for like cool plays in Okla. It's in the
mm,
back and beyond of Okla, so please, keep that in mind when you make the trek. But this play is freaking phenomenal. It's been built and created by some of like the a millennial theater stalwarts of the
mm.
Delhi theater scene. So like there's this a popular sort of theater group called Tadpole Repertoire, and there's another one called The Crow. So whatever. So
Okay.
basically, like a lot like the really cool theater talent in Delhi has come together and put together this play. It's based on true events, and it's a very thorough, thoughtful commentary on culture. There's this one line from the play which says, which in a nutshell basically says that the enemy of culture is not dissent, it is nostalgia. And the play is just
Mm-hmm.
basically about how if you want to progress in culture, you also need to progress the cultural conversation, which explains why Kanye West slash Ye has got the kind of fandom he does. But again, as you can tell, I have a lot of energy after my return from America, after my Ghar Vapsi.
Yes,
But if you're in
yes.
Delhi, go watch that play. It's on till next week, Sunday, and it is a delight.
What is my recommendation? I actually gotten onto a show surprisingly late, which is Miss Marvel, the Marvel
Oh,
show.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I found it so refreshing to see a show. Not taking away the fact that it's a Marvel show, but it's a show which has South Asians, that is almost been created by a South Asian. You can make that out very clearly. It's not, and my recommendation is actually go searching on, let's say, Spotify, anywhere you listen to music to. The album of Miss Marvel is a
Mhm.
fabulous collection of tracks from the show. A lot of nostalgia there, a lot of like fun tracks as well. So, watch the show if you haven't, because it's just lovely. And find that album, listen to that playlist of Miss Marvel.
Hooray! Wow, Taj. Lovely. And with that,
और
we're
इसी के
up.
साथ हमारे संडे का प्रोग्रामिंग, अच्छा नहीं, आप लोगों का वेंसडे का प्रोग्रामिंग खत्म. आई शैल गो बैक टू फिगरिंग आउट what has happened in my child's diaper, and you can continue with your Sunday plans.
This is what happens when you choose to not have children. You
Yes.
can chill
No
out.
projectile poop in your radar.
No project. No one is
Kids do
shouting on me
projectile
today.
poop, right? Like, guys, I'm putting a record. Kids have projectile poop. If you aren't careful with the diaper, that shit really flies.
That explains your glow today, Varun. Must be some tutty face mask.
Beach ka bichu and touchy face mask. The two takeaways for today's episode, guys. Please write to us hashtag touchy face mask or hashtag beach ka bichu, which is your favorite. Please let us know on Twitter. Whether it Varun Dugi, at the rate Suchita Salwan on all platforms. Welcome.
Lovely.
Or welcome. Thank you for listening to Think Fast. We shall see you on the other side.
Doodles. Bye.
Bye.